Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA, from the Black Boule, in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. One of my viewers wanted to know if white females were the original baby mamas, single mothers, and promiscuous women. And when it comes down to the Western white female, she's always been the original baby mama, single mother, and promiscuous woman, and she was that before she ever decided to go and get on a boat and travel to the country that would eventually become America. Now, when it comes down to the white female, she basically is someone who never had a moral position, like the old proverb states from Africa that says, "A race can rise no higher than the moral position of its women, and as the woman goes, so goes the race." Well, when it comes down to the Western white female, she's never had a moral position, and the only direction she has gone in is one where she basically lived in a culture at the bottom of society. And she lived in a culture at the bottom of society because she has a very base mindset, a base mindset based on the base nature that she has. And with that base nature, she's basically caught up in her hypergamy. And as she's caught up in her hypergamy, she's looking to elevate her social status by being with a man who had high social status, and looking to be with a man who had the high social status and the most resources, and with her not having much to offer in a patriarchal society outside of what was between her legs. Usually this is what she bartered herself in exchange to try to climb up that social ladder as related to life. Now, when it comes down to a lot of these white females, this is the way things were for them inside of those Western societies, but a lot of times they would not go out here and talk about those things that they did in Western societies. A lot of times what would happen is they would keep things quiet regarding this white female because many of the beta males and simps, again, wanted to be able to gain sexual access to these women. And since they wanted to gain sexual access to these women, they would go out here and create covert contracts where they would hope to elevate the women that they wanted to get with to a higher social status in society. And as they look to elevate those white women to a higher social status in society, they would again look to trade these women in a business transaction such as marriage, and the women who were born virgins basically and maintained their chastity, these women could basically again go out here and exchange their bodies for marriage, and again exchange their bodies for marriage to be allowed to live a higher lifestyle and be able to elevate their social status in the gynocentric society known as Western society. And as they were elevating their social status, they would go out here and use this to build wealth, and this is how most of the white females basically became, again, the original promiscuous woman, again, because she was basically, again, trading her body in an effort to elevate her social status. And usually white women who could not marry, what they would do is go out here and trade their bodies in relationships such as the ones where they were mistresses or side pieces. And when it came down to the poorer white women, those poorer white women basically wound up on a road to prostitution if they could not get married at all. So when it comes down to the whole culture of promiscuity in the West, the whole culture of promiscuity basically started with the white female and her low moral position. And with the white female's low moral position, this is what really put her on the road to becoming a single mother in a lot of cases, because what would happen with these women is that there really wasn't a lot of divorce in those ancient times. No, there wasn't much divorce back then, But there were a lot of women, because there were more women than men in society, and they would become mistresses. And as they would become mistresses, these women would become the baby mamas, as we call them today, but they would usually be the single mothers of illegitimate children. And as they had these illegitimate children, which were called bastards at the time, these were the kids that they would have with the men of high social status in society. They would have relations with these men, and again, all these white men and white women would put on a veneer to make it look like they were so good, when in actuality they were living in sin. That was the great irony of the situation. Many of these white men and women would go out here talking about how Christian they were and how much they served God, but they were not really serving God with their hearts. No, they were not serving God at all. No, what would happen with many of these white men and white women is they would participate in their own religion of white supremacy, and as they participated in that religion, they found the justification to go out here and participate in this sexual promiscuity. And again, participate in this sexual promiscuity where not only were these women having affairs with married men, but the married men were even in some cases having affairs with their wives. So the whole culture of promiscuity really comes from Western white society, and that culture basically was brought to places like America. And as that culture was brought here to America, this is where foundational black Americans, the descendants that we came from, the African slaves, learn this culture and way of life. We learn this culture and way of life from the West, from the European white woman. The European white woman basically taught this culture to most of the African slaves, and as those African slaves became black people, this is how we learned this whole culture of sexual promiscuity that they basically kept suppressed, because when it came down to the white female was notoriously hypergamous. She was notoriously hypergamous because she was looking to go out here and continue to elevate her social status to be with the wealthiest men in society, and she would go out here and look to monkey branch from man to man, whether it be through an affair or a divorce, or even the death of her husband. She would look to monkey branch from man to man, and this is what would happen with many of these Western white women. And again, many of these Western white women, in an effort to keep a facade up to make themselves appear to be the image of ultimate chastity and ultimate virtue, what they would do is project this image of promiscuity and single motherhood onto the Western black woman and try to make the black woman that ideal, even though the black women basically learned this culture as African slaves from the white woman, who they were told was the ultimate image of womanhood by the white men in society, who elevated her to that high position. And because those black women basically bought into that ideal, they thought, oh, to be like this white woman was a good thing. And as they bought into this idea that being like this white woman was a good thing, what happened to many of these black women is they didn't understand that they were being manipulated into fitting into a false narrative about the black female image, but the black female's image of sexual promiscuity, being a single mother, and being what we call since the late 1980s a baby mama. All of that came from the white woman, and the white woman was notoriously, again, extremely sexually promiscuous all throughout history. And as she was sexually promiscuous all throughout history, she would get involved with all sorts of males in an effort to try to, again, elevate her social status. And when things did not work out, where that man would walk out on his family, this is what leads to many of those women becoming single mothers, or they would get involved with toxic males who never wanted a child, hoping to create a covert contract where if they got pregnant, they could go out here and form a connection with that man and hope to make him love them. But what a lot happens is a lot of those women wound up becoming baby mamas. But this whole image and narrative oftentimes is projected onto black women, to make them the image of sexual promiscuity and make them the image of single motherhood and the face of single motherhood and sexual promiscuity. But most black women basically learned this from white women, and as time went on, the white supremacists would go out here and create narratives in his propaganda, such as the Jezebel stereotype and the Mammy stereotype, to present the image of black women being the image of and the face of sexual promiscuity, when in actuality this was the culture of white women and the way of life for the white woman. It was a way of life for the white woman because the white woman was living in a society where white men were basically, again, outnumbered. We're in a place where women were outnumbering men, and men were always at war because white men were always at war. So men were at a scarcity, and men with resources were extremely scarce. So the white woman basically, again, had to barter her body in sexual promiscuity to be able to get involved with the higher status men, because women did not have rights in those societies, and with women not having rights, they had to submit to these white men, and they had to go out here and support the white men who would have the most resources. And the way they would do that, again, is to offer their bodies through sexual promiscuity. So this white woman was promiscuous from day one, and this is the culture that black women learned. And again, a lot of black women get demonized for this, but the original sexually promiscuous woman was the white female. She was the original sexually promiscuous woman. She was the original baby single mother, because she would again have affairs with white men on the side and even other men like black men or foreign men, and again have babies for them in hope to get an inheritance. So they would have illegitimate children, hoping to again be an heir or be a mistress and be taken care of. This is the way of life that the white woman taught the world. And again, this is the moral position of the white woman. She'll want to elevate her moral position to be that of an African or other type of woman, but her moral position is way lower than that is presented in the old African proverb, and she's always been in a direction at the bottom whenever she gets into a position of power. And when she gets into a position of power, wherever she goes, she takes that society into decline because her moral position is low. And since her moral position is low, she takes every society she's ever a part of into a decline, such as Rome, Babylon, and even ancient Egypt. Whenever this white female does come to power, again, her promiscuity and her hypergamy destroy civilizations, and this is why smart men, again, look to, again, get control over women, because, again, the direction that woman goes in can basically take your society into decline. And the same thing is happening here in the West, because the wealthy basically supported white feminism, and as they supported white feminism, the white female, again, was the promiscuous woman, and the promiscuous woman who took a society into decline. So a lot of people want to make the black woman the face of baby mamas, single mothers, and sexual promiscuity. However, the black woman learned her way of life from the white woman. I go in depth on this in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, and in another book I wrote called The Women Crisis. And they basically create crises in society because these women, again, basically have no moral position, and the only direction a society go when they are in charge is down, because these women, again, basically, again, are the ones who created the culture and teach that culture from generation to generation of being sexually promiscuous to their children. And that basically takes that society into a decline because there are no values being taught to the children. And sadly, because these women are in charge, you go from having families with children to children of the corn. And those children of the corn, because they're promiscuous, basically take a society from being men and women who build a civilization to winding up becoming a civilization filled with men and women in crisis. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation for a minimum of $15 to the PayPal or the Cash App by clicking the link in the description box, and if I know something about that subject, I will make that video for you. And if you want to learn more about why women become promiscuous, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com. And if you want to learn more about the paradigm of failure that leads to societies run by women falling apart, you can pick up my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, on Amazon.com, or you can find it at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, and other big box retailers like Walmart and Target. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.